I slumped onto the couch, utterly drained from the day's events. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, struggling to process Larry's bombshell revelation. As I stared blankly at the wall, his words echoed in my head like a broken record. I got Kara pregnant. We need to talk about a divorce, June. Those 9 words shattered the life I had known, sending shockwaves through my very core. Kara, my supposed best friend since childhood, had betrayed me in the most unimaginable way, by having an affair with my husband Larry. And now she carried his child, a living embodiment of their deceit. I couldn't help but let out a bitter chuckle as I remembered the envelope I had been safeguarding for years, the divorce papers I had prepared just in case. Little did I know that the day would come when I'd have to pull them out, not for my own protection, but because of Larry's unfaithfulness. Reaching into the drawer, I retrieved the envelope and slid out the crisp documents. With a deep breath, I handed them to Larry, whose expression was a mixture of shock and guilt. "Here you go, Larry," I said, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. "The divorce papers I've had ready for this very day." Larry's mouth hung open, rendered speechless by my preparedness. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction in catching him off guard. "June, he began, but I held up my hand, silencing him. "Save it, Larry. You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences. I won't be made a fool of anymore." I stood up, suddenly feeling a surge of strength and determination. This was the moment I had been bracing myself for. The moment when I would reclaim my life and leave behind the betrayal and lies. "Pack your things and get out," I said, my voice firm and unwavering. "I don't want to see your face again." Larry's eyes widened, but he knew better than to argue. He had played his hand, and now it was my turn to take control. As he gathered his belongings, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that the charade was finally over, and I could begin the process of healing and moving on. The door slammed shut behind him, and I was left alone in the silence. But for the first time in a long while, the silence felt liberating, not oppressive. I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life, and nothing would stand in my way. In the days following Larry's departure, a heavy silence settled over our suburban Denver home. The once familiar surroundings now felt foreign, reminders of the life I had known slowly crumbling around me. As I navigated this new reality, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't quite right. Larry's behavior in the weeks leading up to his confession had been odd, to say the least. He was constantly glued to his phone, typing away furiously at all hours of the day and night. Whenever I questioned him about it, he dismissed my concerns with a wave of his hand and a mumbled excuse about work. But I knew better. I had seen that kind of behavior before, back when my ex-boyfriend Alex had cheated on me during our college years. The secrecy, the lies, the constant need to be on his phone, it was all too familiar, and it had left me with a deep-seated mistrust that never truly went away. As I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by the remnants of our once happy life, I couldn't help but flash back to those painful memories. The hurt, the betrayal, the overwhelming sense of not being enough. It all came rushing back, like a tidal wave crashing over me. And yet, even in the midst of my despair, a tiny flicker of anger began to burn within me. How could Larry, the man I had trusted with my heart and my life, do this to me? How could he so callously disregard the vows we had made, the promises we had exchanged? The more I thought about it, the more the anger grew, fueled by the realization that Kara, my supposed best friend, had been in on the whole charade. The two of them sneaking around behind my back, lying to my face. It was a betrayal so deep, so profound, that it shook me to my very core. I found myself replaying every interaction, every conversation, searching for clues that I had missed. Had Kara's overly friendly behavior towards Larry been a sign? Had her constant presence in our lives been a ploy to get closer to him? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. But amidst the hurt and the anger, a newfound resolve began to take shape. I would not be a victim in this twisted web of deceit. I would not allow myself to be cast aside like a piece of trash, discarded and forgotten. No, I would rise above it all, and I would make them pay for what they had done to me. Larry and Kara may have thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming their way. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to fight, for my dignity, for my self-respect, and for the life I deserved. Just when I thought the betrayal couldn't sting anymore, life decided to twist the knife even deeper. Kara, the so-called friend who had slept with my husband and gotten herself pregnant, was moving back to town. The universe really did have a sick sense of humor. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. Surely, Kara wouldn't be brazen enough to rub her conquest in my face by settling down in the same town where she had destroyed my marriage. But as the weeks passed and her presence became more and more apparent, the truth became impossible to ignore. She was everywhere, at the grocery store, the coffee shop, even the park where I used to take leisurely strolls. Each time I saw her, a sickening feeling would rise in the pit of my stomach, a combination of rage and betrayal so potent that it threatened to consume me. And then there was Larry. My soon-to-be ex-husband, who had once sworn to love and cherish me, now seemed to gravitate towards Kara like a moth to a flame. Whenever I saw them together, a twisted sense of camaraderie radiating between them, it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. "June, you're being ridiculous." Larry would scoff whenever I raised my concerns. "Kara's my friend, too. There's nothing going on." Friend. The word left a bitter taste in my mouth. How could he be so blasé about the woman who had helped him demolish our marriage, our family? How could he not see the blatant disrespect in their constant togetherness? But Larry was blind to it all. Or perhaps he simply didn't care. Either way, his dismissive attitude only fueled the fire burning within me. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, stewing in my anger, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kara standing on my doorstep, a sickeningly sweet smile plastered across her face. "Hey, bestie," she cooed, as if nothing had changed between us. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." I couldn't believe her audacity. This woman, who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, had the nerve to show up at my doorstep, acting as if we were still the closest of friends. "Don't you dare call me that," I spat, my voice dripping with venom. "You're no friend of mine, not after what you did." Kara's smile faltered, but only for a moment. "June, come on. We've been friends forever. Surely you're not going to let a little thing like this come between us?" A little thing? I could feel my blood boiling at her callous disregard for the pain she had caused. "Get out," I growled, my fists clenched at my sides. "And don't ever show your face around me again, you lying, deceitful snake." With that, I slammed the door in her face, leaving her stunned on the other side. As I leaned against the closed door, tears of rage streaming down my cheeks, I made a silent vow to myself. I would not let them win. No matter what it took, I would have my revenge. As if the betrayal of my husband and supposed best friend wasn't enough, the universe decided to pile on even more misery. Larry's mother, Evelyn, had been struggling with dementia for years, and it had finally reached a point where she could no longer live on her own. Guess who got saddled with the responsibility of being her full-time caregiver? Yep, that's right. Me. Larry, in all his infinite wisdom, decided that I was the perfect person to take on this burden, despite the fact that our marriage was crumbling around us. And of course, when I protested, he played the guilt card like a master manipulator. "June, you know how much my mom means to me," he pleaded. Those puppy dog eyes that used to melt my heart now only filling me with disgust. "I can't bear the thought of putting her in a home. Please do this for me." Do it for him? After everything he'd done, he had the audacity to ask me for favors? But I knew better than to argue. Larry had a way of twisting words and emotions, using my own fears and insecurities against me. So, like a fool, I agreed. And that's how I found myself spending my days caring for a woman who had never truly accepted me. Evelyn had always been critical of me, making snide remarks about my cooking, my cleaning, my very existence in her son's life. But now, in her more lucid moments, she would reach for my hand, her eyes pleading with me for help, for comfort. It was a twisted game of push and pull, one that left me emotionally and physically drained. One minute she would be cursing my name, calling me a useless burden on her family. The next, she would be begging me to stay, to not leave her alone. Through it all, Larry remained absent, both physically and emotionally. His visits were few and far between, and when he did show up, he was distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. No doubt he was off gallivanting with Kara, living the life he had always dreamed of, while I was stuck in this living nightmare. The weight of it all was suffocating. I found myself longing for the days when my biggest worry was whether or not Larry would remember to pick up milk on his way home from work. Now, my days were filled with cleaning up messes, administering medication, and trying to reason with a woman who was slowly losing her grip on reality. And yet, despite the challenges, despite the constant barrage of insults and ingratitude, there was a part of me that couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of loyalty to Evelyn. After all, she was the mother of the man I had once loved more than anything in this world. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, that loyalty began to wear thin. Larry's manipulation, his utter disregard for my well-being, had pushed me to the brink of my own sanity. And slowly, a burning desire for revenge began to take root within me. If he thought he could just discard me like a piece of trash, leaving me to care for his ailing mother while he cavorted with his mistress, he had another thing coming. I may have agreed to play the dutiful wife for now, but mark my words, I would have my vengeance, and it would be sweet. The straw that finally broke the camel's back came in the form of a private investigator's report. After months of suspicion and gut-wrenching uncertainty, I finally had the truth laid bare before me. Larry and Kara's sordid affair, complete with dates, times, and locations of their trysts. As I pored over the damning evidence, a strange sense of calm washed over me. There was no more room for doubt, no more excuses to cling to. The betrayal was real, and it cut deeper than any knife ever could. But amidst the pain, a newfound resolve began to take root. I was done being the victim, the dutiful wife who turned a blind eye to her husband's indiscretions. It was time to take action, to reclaim my life and my dignity. First, though, I had to deal with the ever-present thorn in my side. My mother. Bless her heart, she meant well, but her outdated beliefs and unwavering loyalty to the patriarchy were suffocating me. "June, honey, you have to think about this," she pleaded, her voice laced with concern. "A divorce would ruin your family, ruin Larry's life. You need to stand by your man, for better or worse." Stand by my man? The audacity of such a statement made my blood boil. Had she not seen the evidence, the cold, hard proof of his betrayal? "Mom, with all due respect, Larry made his choices," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. "He chose to cheat, to lie, to disrespect our marriage vows. I won't be made a fool of any longer." My mother's eyes widened, taken aback by my newfound assertiveness. But before she could protest further, I held up a hand to silence her. "This is my decision, and it's final. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." With that, I turned on my heel and left her sputtering in the living room. No more excuses, no more justifications. It was time to take control of my life. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly, laying the groundwork for my revenge. I consulted with lawyers, gathered evidence, and made contingency plans. All the while, I played the part of the dutiful wife, lulling Larry into a false sense of security. And then, when the time was right, I struck. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when I called Larry into the living room, a stack of papers clutched in my hand. He ambled in, unsuspecting, that dopey grin on his face that used to make my heart flutter. "What's up, honey?" he asked, plopping down on the couch. Without a word, I tossed the stack of papers onto his lap. Divorce papers, already filled out and signed by me. Larry's eyes widened in shock as he flipped through the pages, realization dawning on his face. "June, what is this? You can't be serious." "Oh, but I am," I replied, my voice cold and steady. "You brought this on yourself, Larry. Now it's time to face the consequences." As he scrambled to his feet, pleading and begging for another chance, I simply turned my back and walked away. No more words needed to be said. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. Revenge, it seemed, would be mine after all. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As I stood in the living room, facing Larry and Kara, it was like a scene straight out of a twisted drama. The two of them, huddled together on the couch, their faces etched with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "June, please," Larry began, his voice trembling. "Let's talk about this. We can work things out." "Work things out?" A bitter laugh escaped my lips as I shook my head in disbelief. "Work things out? You really have some nerve, Larry." I turned my gaze towards Kara, who couldn't even meet my eyes. "And you, my supposed best friend, How could you do this to me? Kara mumbled something under her breath, but I held up a hand to silence her. Save it. I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Larry rose to his feet, desperation written all over his face. June, think about this. A divorce would ruin me. My career, my reputation, everything would be destroyed. For a moment, a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Was I really ready to upend our lives like this? But then I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the countless nights spent crying myself to sleep, and that doubt evaporated like smoke. That's not my problem anymore, Larry, I said, my voice steely with resolve. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. Kara finally found her voice, her eyes brimming with tears. June, please. We never meant to hurt you. It just happened. It just happened? I repeated incredulously. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and you have the audacity to make excuses? I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, a white-hot rage that had been simmering for months. You know what, Kara? You're not my friend anymore. Why, in fact, you're nothing to me. Both of you can go to hell. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, suffocating us all with their finality. Larry opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off before he could start. Don't even try it, Larry. This is over. Done. Finished. I want you out of this house by the end of the day. Kara let out a sob, burying her face in her hands. Larry, on the other hand, simply stared at me in stunned silence, as if he couldn't quite believe what was happening. June, please, he tried again, desperation seeping into his voice. I'll do anything. Just don't do this. But I was done listening, done making excuses for his behavior. With a shake of my head, I turned and walked away, leaving them to their misery. As I climbed the stairs, each step felt lighter, as if a massive weight was being lifted from my shoulders. The lies, the deceit, the constant sense of betrayal, it was all finally behind me. In that moment, I knew that no matter what came next, I would be okay. I had survived the unthinkable, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Larry and Kara may have thought they had won, but in the end, it was me who had reclaimed my power, my dignity, and my life. And as I closed the bedroom door behind me, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge, it seemed, was truly a dish best served cold. The next few hours were a blur of activity, punctuated by the sounds of shouting and slamming doors. True to my word, I was kicking Larry out of our home, and he was not going quietly. June, please, let's talk about this, he pleaded, his voice a mixture of desperation and anger. You can't just throw me out on the street. I steeled myself against his protests, focusing instead on the task at hand. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I began gathering his belongings, clothes, books, personal effects, and tossing them haphazardly into boxes and bags. June, stop this madness, he shouted, grabbing my arm in a futile attempt to halt my progress. Think about what you're doing. I twisted out of his grasp, my eyes blazing with a fury I had never felt before. Don't you dare touch me, Larry. You lost that right a long time ago. Kara, bless her soul, had wisely chosen to remove herself from the situation, retreating to who knows where, but even her absence couldn't dampen the raging fire within me. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The chance to excise the cancer that had been slowly poisoning my life. With each item I packed, each memory I boxed away, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I would be damned if I let Larry's betrayal taint it any longer. June, please, I'm begging you, he tried again, his voice cracking with emotion. I can make things right, I swear. Just give me another chance. Another chance? The absurdity of his request nearly made me laugh out loud. How many chances had I given him already, only to have them thrown back in my face? You had your chance, Larry, I said, my voice cold and unwavering, and you blew it. Now it's time to face the consequences. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me. Angela, my best friend and confidant, had arrived, not a moment too soon. I opened the door to find her standing there, a look of steely determination on her face. Without a word, she brushed past me and made her way towards Larry, who was still pleading his case. You heard the lady, Angela said, her voice leaving no room for argument. It's time for you to go. Larry's eyes widened as he took in her imposing presence. For a moment I thought he might try to argue, but one look from Angela seemed to drain him of his fight. Fine, he spat, his voice dripping with bitterness. But this isn't over, June. Not by a long shot. With that, he gathered up the boxes and bags, shooting me one last venomous glare before storming out the door and slamming it behind him. As the echoes of his departure faded, I felt myself sag against the wall, the weight of the past few hours finally catching up to me. Angela was at my side in an instant, her arms wrapped around me in a comforting embrace. "It's okay," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "You did the right thing. He's gone, and you're free." And in that moment, as I clung to my friend, I knew she was right. The battle had been won, and the war was finally over. Larry was gone, banished from my life, and I could finally begin to heal. Revenge, it seemed, was a dish best served piping hot. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional upheaval, but through it all, I remained steadfast in my resolve. Larry thought he could walk away scot-free, but he had another thing coming. With the help of a tenacious lawyer, I went after him for everything he had, alimony, assets, you name it. And in the end, my perseverance paid off. The judge saw right through Larry's lies and awarded me a hefty settlement, one that would ensure I could start my new life on solid financial footing. But the true victory, the sweetest revenge, came in the form of Kara's downfall. Karma, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. It all started when Kara's new boyfriend, some poor schmuck she had sunk her claws into, caught wind of her sordid affair with Larry. Needless to say, he was less than thrilled about being played for a fool. "You lying, deceitful snake," he shouted, his voice carrying across the restaurant where they had been having a romantic dinner. "How could you do this to me?" Kara, for all her manipulative ways, was clearly caught off guard. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, unable to conjure up one of her trademark excuses. I can explain," she stammered, her eyes darting around the room in panic. But her boyfriend wasn't having any of it. With a shake of his head, he pushed away from the table and stormed out, leaving Kara to face the scrutiny of the other diners alone. As word of her betrayal spread through our social circles, Kara found herself increasingly ostracized. Friends who had once fawned over her suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Even her own family seemed to turn their backs, ashamed of her actions. And through it all, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Payback, it seemed, was a dish best served ice cold. As for me, I was slowly but surely piecing my life back together. With Angela's unwavering support, I had moved into her spare bedroom, using it as a temporary home base while I figured out my next steps. It was during those long nights, huddled together on the couch with a bottle of wine and endless episodes of trashy reality TV, that the idea began to take shape. A business, one that would help other women like me, women who had been betrayed, belittled, and beaten down by the men in their lives. With Angela's encouragement, I took the leap, pouring my savings and settlement money into launching a boutique consulting firm. Our mission? To empower women, to help them find their strength and reclaim their lives after heartbreak and betrayal. It was a risky move, but one that paid off in spades. Word of our services spread like wildfire, and before long we had a thriving client base of women from all walks of life, each one seeking the same thing: revenge. And as I sat in my sunny office, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of a successful business, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. I had taken the ultimate revenge on Larry and Kara. I had built a life for myself, one that was infinitely better than anything they could have ever offered me. As for them, well, let's just say that karma has a way of evening the score. And in the end, it was me who emerged victorious, with a newfound strength and resilience that no one could ever take away. Revenge, it seemed, was a dish best served with a side of empowerment and a heaping helping of success.